Section 1. A glimmer in the water, the spark of discovery. It all began on a rather ordinary day in January of 1848. James W. Marshall, a carpenter and sawmill operator, was inspecting a new mill for his employer, John Sutter. The mill sat on the South Fork of the American River, nestled in the quiet foothills of the Sierra Nevada. As he looked into the channel of water that would power the mill's saw, a glint of light caught his eye. He reached down into the cold water and picked up a few small, shiny flakes of metal. They were heavier than he expected, and their warm, yellow luster was quite distinct. He hammered one of the flakes. It did not break or shatter, but simply flattened, a key property of gold. He showed his findings to the workers at the mill, who were at first quite skeptical. But Marshall was persistent. He took a small pouch of the gleaming metal to Sutter's fort to show his boss. John Sutter, a Swiss immigrant who had built a vast agricultural empire in the Sacramento Valley, was equally cautious. Together they consulted an encyclopedia and confirmed their growing suspicion. It was, without a doubt, gold. Sutter wished to keep this discovery a secret, fearing a rush would overrun his lands. But a secret of this magnitude is very difficult to contain.
Sam Brannan famously shouted, "Gold, gold, gold from the American River!"
The quiet discovery became a global phenomenon, a trickle of news that turned into a flood. A great, chaotic, and transformative chapter in American history was about to begin. Section 2. The 49ers. A tide of hopeful humanity. The people who answered this call became known as the 49ers, named for the year 1849, when the migration reached its fever pitch. They were a diverse collection of souls, farmers from New England, clerks from New York, laborers from the southern states, many leaving behind families, jobs, and the only lives they had ever known. They packed their belongings, sold their farms, and said their goodbyes. There were three main routes: the long sea voyage around Cape Horn with terrible storms, meager food, and disease on crowded vessels; a faster route through Panama, plagued by tropical illness and long waits for passage; and the iconic overland route, where thousands gathered along the Missouri River and set out in wagon trains for months. They faced scorching deserts, formidable mountain ranges, and unpredictable weather. They forded rivers, repaired broken wagons, and cared for exhausted livestock. Diaries record starvation, dehydration, accidents, incredible hardship, and the profound beauty of the untamed landscape. Despite it all, the lure of gold was stronger than fear, stronger than comfort, stronger than the pull of home. Exaggerated letters and newspapers fanned the flames. This became one of the largest mass movements in American history, a tide of hopeful humanity. They poured into a sparsely populated, little-known region, transforming it almost overnight. Section 3. The Roaring Towns. San Francisco and the Boom. Before the gold rush, San Francisco, then Yerba Buena, was a small, sleepy port with a few hundred residents. Within a year, it became a chaotic, sprawling city. Hundreds of ships, many abandoned by their crews, clogged the harbor. Some ships were dragged ashore and converted into buildings, hotels, stores, saloons. The city grew so quickly that tents and shacks sprang up almost overnight, creating a maze of muddy streets. Demand was immense and prices soared. A single egg could cost $1, a loaf of bread even more. A simple room, a small fortune. Entrepreneurs who sold to miners often became the wealthiest of all. Shovels, picks, pans, food, clothing, lodging. With a population of young men far from home, saloons, gambling halls, and dance halls flourished. Life was energetic and lawless. Lacking police and courts, disputes were often settled with fists or weapons. Vigilante committees imposed rough justice. Across the gold regions, towns appeared like mushrooms after rain. Hangtown, Rough and Ready, Angel's Camp, many vanishing when the gold ran out. But some, like Sacramento and Stockton, evolved from supply depots into permanent centers of commerce and government for the growing state. The arrival of the 49ers transformed California with astonishing speed. Section 4. In the diggings. The dream of picking up nuggets faded quickly for most. They discovered mining was backbreaking, monotonous, and often unrewarding. Placer mining used a simple pan to wash gold-bearing gravel, swirling to let lighter material spill over, leaving heavier flakes behind. It required patience, a strong back, and skill to avoid washing away the gold. As surface gold waned, teams turned to rockers, shoveling gravel, pouring water, and rocking to trap gold on riffles. Camp life was harsh, tents or crude cabins, diets of bacon, beans, and hardtack. Fresh food was rare and dear. Clean water was scarce, sanitation non-existent. Diseases like dysentery and cholera swept through camps. Accidents were frequent, falling rocks, drowning in swift rivers, claiming many lives. Isolation and disappointment took a psychological toll. Camps swung between extreme highs and lows, a lucky strike one day, empty pockets the next. Most days ended with sore muscles, empty pockets, and a dwindling sense of hope. Still, the dream kept them there. One pan, one chance, one more day. As the years passed and the easily accessible gold disappeared from streams and riverbeds, mining became industrial and destructive. Prospectors with pans and cradles were replaced by large, well-financed companies with heavy machinery. One method, coyote holing, dug narrow, unstable shafts into hillsides to follow veins of gold. Tunnels often collapsed without warning, trapping miners inside. Hydraulic mining used high-pressure water, shot through iron nozzles called monitors, to blast entire hillsides into sluices. Whole landscapes were reshaped in months. Rolling, tree-covered hills became barren, scarred canyons. Debris called slickens choked rivers for hundreds of miles. The Yuba and the Feather, once clear and deep, became shallow and muddy. Massive floods buried fertile farmland, sparking long legal battles among America's first major environmental conflicts. Operating water cannons was perilous. Unstable pits caused landslides that could bury workers instantly. Mercury used to capture fine gold washed into rivers, contaminating waterways and fish, a poisonous legacy that lingers today. It really was devastating. Section 6. A world in a gold pan. A diverse and conflicted population. The California Gold Rush was a truly global event, drawing people from almost every continent. Thousands came from the silver mines of Mexico and Chile, bringing valuable skills and early success, which bred resentment, Irish fleeing famine, Germans escaping unrest, French and British adventurers, each with their language, customs and traditions. Camps became cosmopolitan and vibrant, but also tense and conflict-ridden. Perhaps the most distinct group were the Chinese. Tens of thousands crossed the Pacific, hoping to send money home, often reworking claims others abandoned. They faced intense prejudice. California passed a foreign miners' tax, disproportionately enforced against Chinese miners. Many suffered violence and theft, driven from claims and forced into laundries and service work. Laws excluded African Americans, Latinos, and Chinese from testifying in court, leaving them little legal recourse. The dream was said to be open to all, but race and nationality decided who could succeed. It was a world in a gold pan, dazzling diversity and deep division. Section 7. The Darkest Price, the devastation of native peoples. Before 1848, hundreds of tribes and languages flourished with complex societies and deep knowledge of the natural world. Their world was shattered by hundreds of thousands of gold seekers, bringing violence, disease, and environmental destruction. Rivers vital for salmon were polluted, livestock consumed gathered foods, forests were clear-cut, the native economy and culture dismantled. Miners formed militias that carried out organized campaigns against indigenous villages. Men, women, and children were killed indiscriminately. The state and federal governments did little. California even paid bounties for the scalps and heads of native people. A state-sanctioned genocide, Diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza swept through communities. In 2 decades, California's native population plummeted from about 150,000 to just 30,000. It was a demographic collapse of horrifying proportions, a dark and often overlooked chapter of the gold rush story. For the original inhabitants, the gold rush was a story of immense loss and survival against impossible odds. Section 8, A New Economy, a New State, Building California. The gold rush did more than bring people, it reshaped the economy. Wealth from the earth flowed to merchants, bankers, and industrialists. Money financed roads, schools, and cities, agriculture in fertile valleys, manufacturing, and trade. A sparsely populated territory suddenly needed stable government. Military rule was inadequate. In 1849, delegates drafted a constitution. After intense debate in Congress over slavery, California entered the Union in 1850 as a free state. Yet stark inequality remained. A new wealthy class rose while many who labored stayed poor. The legal system often favored the powerful. Lawlessness, racial prejudice, and a vast rich-poor gap persisted. Nevertheless, the rush shifted America's focus westward and fueled the dream of a transcontinental railroad. San Francisco grew into the financial and cultural capital of the American West. A few shiny flakes set in motion an economic and political powerhouse on the Pacific coast. Section 9, The Enduring Echo, the gold rush's complicated legacy. It was a defining and paradoxical event, incredible optimism and brutal reality, nation-building and devastating destruction. It reinforced the American dream, a story of self-invention, hard work, courage, and a bit of luck to strike it rich. The narrative of boundless opportunity and individual ambition found its symbol in California, the Golden State. But it is also a cautionary tale of extreme social inequality, racial violence, and profound disregard for the natural environment. The story of the 49ers is incomplete without the terrible price paid by Native Americans, discrimination against Chinese and Latino immigrants, and the lasting scars upon the land. The effects are still visible today. Modern California's diversity traces to that first global wave, and its water and environmental struggles to conflicts between miners and farmers. Old mining towns endure as landmarks, in books and films, the gold rush holding a mirror to our society. It asks the true cost of progress and prosperity, who benefits from a boom and who is left behind. What began with James Marshall's discovery is a story about building a nation, bright promises and dark contradictions. History is never simple, and the search for fortune shapes the world in ways both brilliant and tragic.